everyone. Today, Radio GC Entertainment meet with great photographer William Kidston. How are you, William?
I'm doing great. We're getting ready for a storm. Other than that, doing great. Getting ready for, it's the end of August, so I'm getting ready now for the holiday seasons.
Oh.
So I have my events coming up, my corporate accounts, my holiday events. Mm-hmm. So everything is good, and also just getting ready to have a nice little chat with you.
Yeah, great. I just wanted to ask you about your life, because you're so famous, and where you grow up, what kind of family you had. Just tell for our auditoria.
Well, just humbled. Born and raised in California, mm-hmm. almost in New York. My father married my mother in Brooklyn, mm-hmm. and they got married on January 7th, 1956. I was born in California, September 5th, 1956. So within 9 months of their marriage, I came along. So they moved from Brooklyn, New York to Pasadena, California, and I was actually born downtown LA. So I've been here pretty much all my life. I mean, I've traveled around the country, lived around the country, but pretty much Southern California is my home.
South California. Okay. And how you start your career? For a photographer or in other businesses? I see you have some businesses, yeah?
Yeah, I've been pretty much been a blessed man. I mean, like, as a kid, normal life, played sports, the normal mm-hmm. football, baseball, wrestled, all that kind of stuff. And I could draw naturally as a kid, but my biggest interest through high school was sports, girls, and drawing portraits of girls to be a friend or a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And after high school, I graduated at 17, left school, went to New York for 2 years, just having a blast. I went to New York, and I advise this for everyone: either you go into into the military, or if you go to college, move away. In my case, I just went to the East Coast because all my family is on the East Coast, and my aunt had a big house in Brooklyn, so I lived there for 2 years, and I had a blast. And then you could go to a bar, and I think it was 19, if I remember right. When I turned 19, I went to a bar in Manhattan with my family. I got so drunk, I don't remember the first few days afterwards, but mm-hmm. I wanted to, after 2 years living there, and I enjoyed everything, but one thing I didn't get used to is the snow. After 2 winters, I said, I'm going back to California to go to college, and that's what I did. Mm-hmm. And then when I came back to California, I signed up at Mount SAC 2 years. Actually, it took 2.5 years to get through a JC school program, because I had to work full-time, went to school full-time. I was an art major. No interest in photography at the time, other than I had a camera part-time, mm-hmm. and then I finally graduated and then went to Cal State Long Beach, and there I was now trying to figure out what to do. Now at that point, at Mount SAC, I barely got through school. I didn't have an interest. I was a little bored with it, and so I figured, okay, I'll take some classes that I have interest in. One was photography, and at the school, I fell in love with it instantly. So from that point on, it's been the ride. It was like, at that point, my dad was a science teacher, so I grew up with that insight to science. And at the house, he would build stuff all the time, and he was very techie, and we had become very techie. He taught the space program, so I grew up with having a personal personal teacher, my father, teaching us about the space program. And this all tied together finally when I took photography, because I took science and all that, was just how to use a camera. You needed numbers, you needed the tech part of it, the technology of cameras. And the artist part came together, and it was like a perfect marriage. And it was like a big wow for me. And I still remember at age 20, it was like winning the lotto. Because from that point on to now, mm-hmm. and we're talking like 40, going on 47 years, and 44 of those years full time. So it's been a blessing, and I've had a career that I could never imagine to be this fun, exciting, meeting people, and I would go through phases. You know, I went through phases where I did newspaper photography, and I went through phases where I had a studio, and I went through phases where I freelanced for different companies. I never worked for somebody full time only. I always had, like, I worked for companies like the City of LA. I was a contract employee. So sometimes you might work 40 hours a week, the next week you might work only 20 hours a week. But I worked with different stations and studios and clients. And so it's always like working, you know, above 40 hours every week. And here we are now. And now what I do is I am now taking all that passion and interest into working more with the handicap. So I've been doing that for about 25 years. And so I've always, when I've been able to volunteer, it's been in the area of working with the handicap with my skills as a videographer, as a cameraman, as a photographer to help promote their programs, to help promote. And when I look back, I never thought about this, but I came along when social media exploded. So for all these clients, like the Jeffrey Foundation, they work with autistic kids, and you have like PCDA in Pasadena, same thing. All of these images now would go on their sites to help promote their programs. And a lot of that was pro bono. You know, I did it because it was the way I could give back. You know, so you know, occasionally I would get paid by the client, but it really wasn't about the money. It was always about working with the programs and the students and the children and the adults in these programs.
So nice.
Yeah.
You meet always with new people, yeah?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, all the time.
I want to ask you, you was in the military?
No, but the funny
What happened with your eye?
My eye, I am the classic case. If you play with fireworks, you're going to lose your eye. And that's what happened. And I was in Brooklyn, of all places, and we were playing with fireworks. And we actually made my cousin, at the time who was, I was 14, he was 17. We had a great 4th of July in 1971. And we had bricks and bricks of firecrackers. And after the 4th, we decided to collect them all in my grandmother's house backyard where we did all the fireworks. And on July 7th, we decided to make a couple bombs, and out of the third one went off a little sooner than we expected, right in front of us, and I lost the eye that way. And what I didn't realize at the time, that when I lost the eye, it was all instant. It was all like in seconds. I had a piece of shrapnel going into the eye and into my stomach. And the family who was right there at the house, we had a lot of family at that point. My aunt, my cousins all came racing in. They saw me and my cousin were both together, and he was running out of a. Let me go back. We were in a shed that he built because my cousin was a gifted artisan. He as a young man about my age at that time, 14, he started doing woodworking, building cabinets, very natural to it. So he had his own personal like workshop. At 17, his own workshop, and he was building stuff all the time, and that's where this all happened. We went to a shed with gunpowder we got from the firecrackers. We were packing a piece of copper tubing, and it went off. So when it went off, I didn't know this until later on. I actually blacked out instantly, like I was out. My cousin, who heard what happened was the explosion went straight up, so he lost skin around his fingers. He runs out of the shed, and I pass out. Well, I go to the hospital. My cousin Sal, who was at the house with his car, because in Brooklyn, maybe every fourth person at that time had a car. The men drove and the ladies didn't. It was more traditional. So Sal was there. We race out to the car with my cousin. We go to the hospital, and I was there for like 8 days. Now the funny part about this, or the strange part about this, is my cousin sat in the front seat on my right side. I'm watching him. My aunt was to my left, and I'm leaning against her like this, and my other cousin was over here, and I recall all of that. But I didn't know this. This happened at age 14. At age 19, when I was in New York visiting well, that's when I moved back at that point. I told them the story, finally after, 5 years, and they said, Billy, they called me Billy back then. Billy, you were out. Like everything I saw, I was seeing out of body. They said, what? I was slumped out, like, eyes were closed, bleeding, and I wasn't like, everything I described was exactly what happened.
Yes.
So it's like out of body, yeah.
I'm so sorry for this. It happened with
Well,
me.
it turned out to be a blessing. So what I get now after that moment is, it wasn't until I turned like 19 age that I realized, I started to really think about, because I put all of what happened like behind me. I wasn't thinking about it. I was too. So what happened was that, like at 19, before I turned 20, I started to have this appreciation for being alive. So my gratitude from that point on has been a gift. Losing the eye, no, that was tragedy, but realizing that I actually had flatline at the hospital at that point. I was hooked up, heart stopped, everything, and they figured about 6 minutes of like flatlining. So when you actually have a tragedy like that and you embrace it, then realize how close you came to dying. That is, and then you look through that. In my case, and I've talked to people about this now, most of my adult life now, where people have gone through this, and I've met people over the years now where we kind of attract to each other. Where most people who, not most, the stat I was reading, 50% of the people that actually had a altering life after death experience and survived that, come out of it with a general awareness of this thanking God.
This is supposed to change your mind. After
it was
this
actually
happened.
it actually was a positive, which I didn't know because at one point, because when I thought about it a few times, how close I was to being killed, I freak out. I actually like shake my head and I actually have to run outside and I would go through that stages and then realize, okay, now I got this body and brain and all that, I'll now embrace it. And the other part of all this is as I became comfortable with it, like I've never looked at it as a handicap. And what do I do all my life? I ride motorcycles, jet skis, snowmobile, water ski.
You strong personality,
right.
Man.
And how about this? Here's the funny part. Over going on 47 years as a 3-time Emmy Award winning videographer, lots of awards as a cameraman with one eye. And I never thought about it that way. It was really about really finding your purpose and finding your passion where nothing stops you. Like I could go back all my life and say, because when you own a business, you go up and down. I never blamed it on the handicap. I never blamed it on having one eye. Even my self-esteem, like I've had friends and girlfriends and wives where the eye was not an issue. But the one thing, the blessing about this is when you start to learn what you don't know, and that is how many people are admiring you with the handicap and altering their lives. I've had people tell me this a lot where, William, if you can do it, I can do it. Like people, today, especially now today with social media and everything, suicide rates are higher. People, drugs and all this type of things. And when you survive all that, and people see that, people go, wow, you know what, William can do it, why not me? And I look back at parents, like you as a parent. I've had parents who had special needs children. I've had lots and lots of friends who had an eye injury. They had to wear a patch. They call me up, William, how do you do it? Do what? Go around with one eye. Well, I don't know what to tell you other than you get used to it.
Very nice. I want to ask you how your life was with so many around famous talents, like artists, producers. Who was like give you more motivation to do this job?
Well, one was, I think for all of us, you have a moment where you're just in the moment about like realizing who you are. As a younger man, and I think for all of us, and I see with my own family, with all my friends, you go through periods you have interests, and you kind of like explore. And at that time, here I came back. So when I was in Brooklyn, going back to the story, I wanted to go back to school then. Why? Because my father was a school teacher, and we grew up with my brothers and I. You go to college, or if you don't go to college, you move out. And that's right.
And you was moved to California because of this.
I went from California to New York because I was only 17 when I graduated. I didn't graduate at 18 or 19. My dad started, my two brothers, actually not my youngest, but we started a year earlier than we should have. So in June, I was always like a year under. So when I graduated in June, I was 17.
Very nice. And what your children doing in life?
Well, my youngest daughter, well, let me go back. Well, yeah, with that, well, let me go back a second, back to
your parents.
The point is you then try to narrow down your interests like you would have. So of course, friends of mine, their kids are all over the place, even changing their actual major. And for myself, once I went from being an art major, which is really kind of like, and I was not serious about it. Like the only thing I could group out, I thought to myself, I did anything with this down the road, I'd maybe be a teacher, because my father was one, and maybe go that route. I didn't know at that point that I would actually find my lotto winning, the lotto number, the metaphor, where this is what I want to do, and I was so clear about it, and so specific about it, I never stopped. So for all of us, and it's rare, like you find that your journey, like the hero's journey, where like for yourself, like all your interests you had as a young girl, as a teenager and in college, it'd be great to have you like find that one thing that this is like who I am. So you're unstoppable. And that's what happened with photography, which over the years led into being working from, working with the presidents to the celebrities to working as a TV cameraman. Working about 30 years doing TV as well.
In what channel?
Well, locally, all of them. I freelance from. In fact, the nice thing is I came up in the era of like the municipalities, the cable networks, where they all were like just. I came along where I'm a full-time photographer, and then I was being hired by from the city of LA to Santa Monica TV, Torrance, CBS, all local, and working as a freelancer. But I would end up working with these different stations with producers on a regular basis. And so, like for example, like the city of LA, I worked under ATI, and I worked there like 15 years, like working with Santa Monica TV, being a crew chief on their appearance shows for over 20 years. Like I still can't believe like over almost 22 years as a crew chief on the TV shows there, along with doing the stills. And so it was, and the one thing about all this, and looking back, I never did it for the notoriety. I never did it for like recognition, but my peers around would always keep me calling, hiring me, and then you start to realize that when and then what happens is 10 years go by, then 20 years go by, and now you're not, you're still photographing mothers on Mother's Day, or 15th or 16th birthday party or 21st, now you're photographing, you're using your same skills for like TD Ameritrade and TD Waterhouse and for like California. So now the same, what starts to evolve now is your client recognition and clients who have budgets, who have quality, so you keep working with them. I go back years working with a guy named Earl Rappaport, who I was working at an event in Beverly Hills, and he was attending the event for the Hollywood Reporter. Specifically at that time, he was also managing Women in Film. He came up to me. He says, "I like what you're doing. I wear a three-piece outfit." Hired me for an upcoming event, and that was over 30 years ago. And from that, just that one client alone, I started to work with the Hollywood Reporter and got to know Tichi Wilkerson Cassell. Who was she? Well, she owned the Hollywood Reporter.
You teach some people, give for them your knowledge?
Yes, many.
Yeah?
Yeah, in fact, one of the periods of my life is when I worked at Citrus College. Yeah, for 5 years, and that was a transition period from I was working for the college, and I worked. The school paper had two advisors: photo advisor, which I was, and the paper advisor. And I worked for a lady for 2 years before she retired, and she taught students how to write, how to do layouts. This is back in the day. This is all like when you had boards and you actually pasted. Everything's on the computer now. And I taught the kids how to take photos for newspapers, basically, photojournalism. And I loved it. And I worked there for 5 years. And so I got to teach kids how to roll. In fact, we actually rolled the film. And then composition, how to photo. And so what they did with me is I would, we go through seasonal. So like in the fall, we would have basketball, women's volleyball, football, events on campus. I would teach you how to photo. So the newspaper was the photography was done by the students. And I would teach them how to do that. And then in the spring we had a golf team and all that. It was great. I loved it. I had my own. I had my classroom was we shared that with the advisor, and then I had my own lab there, which I used to use for my own personal work too.
So nice.
Yeah.
I want to continue our story
Yes.
in second chapter.
Yes.
And thank you very much for coming for our Radio GC Entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah, we love you. You're very nice man, and I wish you good career in your life.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Let me get
you.
a hug. No.
Thank you.
She's a nice lady, so
Thank you.
thank you. Bye bye.